Welcome, Senator Moore, to our February edition of forums. I believe it's like the 7th that we've had, and from the reports that I've received from people, they enjoy them. They enjoy the updates that are given and so on. To kick it off today, Governor Patrick recently released his budget. The proposal officially kicking off the state budget season. And the next step in the process is for the House to release its budget, followed by the Senate. What is your reaction to the governor's budget, and what are some changes that you would like to work towards in the Senate?
Well, as far as the time frame for the budget goes, as you said, the governor's released his budget. The House is going to start putting their budget together for this session. We've actually already been scheduled, the Senate Ways and Means has already scheduled meetings with each individual senator on our budget priorities for this upcoming budget session. We've been told to reserve the second and third weeks of May, the third and fourth weeks of May for our budget deliberations. Some of my priorities are going to be local aid. Making sure that we try to maintain the level of funding for local aid. We've got to come in with a balanced budget. We don't have the stimulus money that we had last year to fill the void. I think if you recall the meeting that you attended with, I think Selectman Hammond and a representative from the town manager's office, we discussed how Auburn had not been receiving, in previous years, had not been receiving the foundation level funding that they should have been. And in last year's budget, with the use of stimulus money, we're able to bring you up to the foundation level funding. So hopefully we can try to maintain that. The problem this year with the budget is we don't have any stimulus money. If you look at the budget that the governor has submitted, which, and this does draw some concerns amongst a lot of us, that he's got $1.6 billion to $2 billion of federal monies in there. 1.6 is federal stimulus money, which, you know, we don't know how that's going to, with a guarantee that that money's going to be coming forward. He's got another $300 million to $400 million of a FMAP money, healthcare money, that we get from the federal government, that we should get. It was from a lawsuit that was settled 3 or 4 years ago that the state's been trying to get. So he's got that in there. So, you know, we get $2 billion of funding to the budget that hopefully he's got good sources in Washington, because the money has not been approved there yet. I don't know if the House is going to use that in their calculations. I don't know if the Senate's going to use that in ours. I would recommend they don't. I don't think we can base a budget on money that has not been approved yet through Washington. If you look at the governor's budget for this year, I think right now he's proposed $6,569,000 for your Chapter 70
which
funding,
is like $800,000 more than last year.
which is positive.
Yeah.
But again, we got to look where the revenue's coming from for that.
Yeah.
So
there's the possibility that the House and the Senate will be reviewing and looking at these numbers and cutting the numbers. Hopefully, I believe there are some 18 cities and towns of the 351 that have increases in the numbers. If you had a chance to look at the whole list of what everyone was to receive in the governor's early release of cities and towns, there were only 18 that were on the plus side, of which Auburn was one of the leading towns. And basically, I think that's because of where we had been, you know, at a decrease in prior years, and they were trying to bring us back up to where we should be.
Well, I think that meeting that we had with the Department of Education and yourself and I think Representative Frost was also there. You know, us pushing the issue and showing that the town was not getting what they were supposed to be getting. I think that definitely helped, because prior to last year, it had been several years that the town had been below the foundation level funding that you should have been getting. So I'm very happy that you're in the top 18. I just hope we can maintain that level of funding.
All right. It would be great if it sticks, but I have great concern that the numbers are going to change drastically between now and the time they go through the House and the Senate.
Oh, there's going to be some changing of numbers. But one thing that we're going to try to do that we couldn't do last year. Last year, the revenues were coming, the revenue benchmarks that were not being met last year were so erratic that it was hard for the legislature and the administration to give an early local aid resolution number, because every time a benchmark was given for revenue projections, it came in lower. This year, where they seem to have stabilized, we've had 7 months of the fiscal year, and 5 of the 7 months so far have met the budget, the benchmark revenue projections, excluding July, which was 24 million below, and then September, which was a big one of 250 million. We've met or exceeded the benchmarks. So right now, where the projections have been more stable, there is discussions going on right now to try to come up with an early local aid resolution number. Again, where I was on the Board of Selectmen for 8 years, I know how important it is for the cities and towns to get that number so you can base your budget. So there is an asserted effort in both branches to try to get you some number as soon as possible.
You have down to cover today level funding, Tufts.
Oh, last year, Tufts University, which is the only veterinary school in Massachusetts, received zero funding when the budgets, and we had to go through the House and the Senate and get $2.5 million back of funding. And basically, what they dedicate half of their student body to Massachusetts residents. In the past, veterinary schools have not been successful in Massachusetts, so having this public-private partnership has worked out very well for us. The school is thriving, it's doing well. So this year, the governor did come out and level fund it, which is a positive sign.
What about the Central Mass Regional Library System?
The Central Mass Regional Library System took a $3 million cut. And if everyone's familiar with the library system, it's based out of Shrewsbury. And if you go to the Auburn Public Library, and if you want a book that's not there, through this regional system, they can ship the book in or mail it in from, say, Athol or Boston. So it's a good way. It saves the communities the money from having to obtain the books, because the books are out there, and if they're not being accessed by someone else, you can utilize them. So we are going to try to look at that, see if we can get some of that money back. The problem with the cut of $3 million to that program is the state is trying to make an concerted effort to have municipalities go to a regionalization, and here's a regional program that's saving substantial amounts of money, and we're cutting the program. So where's the incentive for communities to go to regionalization when we're trying to push them that way, if we're cutting the funding for those programs? Mm-hmm. So,
I'd like to add just one thing on the side. People in Auburn will, I believe, as of like the 15th of February, we'll see a new librarian. Our old librarian has just retired. We honored her at the last selectmen's meeting, and we have hired a new librarian, which will be starting, I believe, on the 15th of February. You recently wrote a letter to Governor Patrick outlining a concern that you had regarding unemployment insurance. Can you tell us about that and what the problem is?
Well, right now, 86% of the businesses in Massachusetts are small businesses. And with the economy the way it is, we are trying to find ways to help small business, to help them create jobs, keep people working, and to help the economy. People work, they can provide for the families, they create income, income taxes come back to the state, sales taxes come back, we then can fund local aid. So it's a cycle that we have to try to support. Right now, Massachusetts, with current law, Massachusetts businesses were going to be faced with a 43% increase in their unemployment insurance. And actually, we just voted yesterday in the Senate. The House had done it last week. We just voted yesterday to freeze the unemployment rate. This is going to save, on average, $250 per worker for small businesses. So we are trying right now to. Last year, we did a lot of reforms. We did 5 major reforms, from transportation reform, where we basically did away with the Turnpike Authority. We did pension reform, ethics reform, education reform. We did a sentencing reform. This year, with the economy the way it is, we are going to try to make an asserted effort to try to help small businesses, try to find ways to increase job growths, have more job opportunities for people. The governor filed his package, also an economic package. So we're going to be hopefully looking at those within the next 2 weeks. Senator Spilker, the chairman of our Economic Development Committee, she filed the bill that we're also looking at. There's 39 different economic development state agency or quasi-state agencies in the state. So what this legislation is going to do is going to look at those, determine which ones are actually working, which ones aren't, and possibly streamlining them. There's going to be an emphasis on regional one-stop economic development corporations. So this way, if you've got a business or you're looking to come to start a business, say in the Auburn area, you know where to go. And this one-stop location you go to can tell you all the opportunities, the infrastructure, what's available for state funding. So we're going to try to provide better access and opportunity for business with what came out. We've also looking at part of the legislation was a permitting extension piece, that if you've got a permit through the town of Auburn or the city of Worcester, it allows you to have a 1-year extension on that permit. This way, if I'm a developer and I've come in, I'm working on something, and say due to financing, we can't proceed forward, instead of making that developer go all the way back from the start of the beginning of the process, that permit can be extended for 1 year. We're doing that. We've also, and that actually came through the Committee on Small Business and Community Development, which I chair. We've also got a bill on regulatory impact statements, which is part of this larger legislation that was filed by Senator Harriet Chandler. And what this is going to do is, before the government can implement any new regulations, there has to be an impact statement done that's going to determine the impact on that business sector. So we are going to try to, we hear a lot of the complaints from people that government is over-regulating. Well, we're going to try to address that. We're going to and stop it in the future.
Okay, and the next item that we have on the agenda today is something that we'll also be covering in a press release with the newspapers and so on. We'll be carry out what we're going to discuss here today, but on a public note, it will have some press related to it. Here in Auburn, the town was recently awarded some money to conduct a feasibility study for a wind turbine project. Can you tell us about that?
Well, actually, this is one of the first projects that I was involved in. I think even before I was sworn in, myself and some of my staff met with you, the town manager's office, and over this proposal. And it's an $85,000 grant from the Clean Energy Center to look at having a wind farm in the town of Auburn. So this will help cover the costs. I think actually in conjunction with this, we had arranged for WPI, Worcester Polytech Institute. Yeah,
they are part of the program, and they are contributing and have been very helpful.
So this actually could be very beneficial to the town of Auburn in saving in the utility costs, and obviously through the initiative through the administration to promote clean energy. That's where the funding is coming from. That's the principle behind this. If Auburn can, through this wind farm, save $200,000, $300,000 on utility costs, then that's a saving that you can use towards education, police, fire, some other services. I know at the Worcester Sheriff's Office, before I left, they were looking at getting a wind turbine for their facility, and they were talking about saving about $800,000. So the savings to this could be limited.
Well, from what I hear, the one they have up at Holy Name High School, they have one which is smaller than the tower, the size of the tower that we have proposed, and theirs supplies more than enough energy for the entire high school.
Yeah,
with excess. Right.
Yeah. See, Pat, the administration's goal is having 2,000 megawatts of wind power capacity installed in the Commonwealth by 2020. So there's going to be significant emphasis put on these types of programs, which is good.
I think I read something where, I don't not sure whether the new Walmart, which is opening in Worcester, is going to have turbines right on the property
Yes.
to supply power. I read something about
Yeah, but I
that.
think they're going to be the smaller version.
Smaller, right, only about 60 feet in height.
Which if we can get corporations or municipalities going to this, it's going to save everyone a lot of money. That's one issue that has come up at some of the forums that my committee has heard when we've gone to the various chambers of commerce throughout the state. And we recently had that down in the Brockton area. We had a lot of small businesses complaining that the cost of utilities was so high. Well, this is one way that we can curb it. And, hopefully down the road, the monies that they save from these utilities costs can go back into hiring more employees, can go back into the economy.
Another piece of good news to come along recently was in regard to transportation funding from the state for regional school districts. What happened there?
Well, the governor during the nights, when the revenue projections for September came in at $250 million below, we have to have a balanced budget by the Constitution. So the governor went in and made he was given, he had his limited 9C authority cuts. And with that, he went in and made his cuts. And one of the line items that he cut was to the regional school districts transportation line item. And again, going with the premise that we are trying to putting emphasis on regionalization. Myself and several other senators and representatives all signed a letter. We submitted to the governor's office, and we advocated that, again, this is a disincentive. You're trying to get municipalities to work together, and in fact, doing that, now you've cut the funding. Well, December came in at $194 million above expectations. That, I think, was right around that point that the governor reinstituted the money he had cut during the 9C cuts. So this funding has been brought back up. I think it was a 63% reduction that he had made to the account that we've now had brought back up to the funding level.
Do we have February yet? Is that those numbers come in?
No, actually,
No.
we'd be waiting for January right now. But
Excuse me, I meant January.
yeah, no, we'd be waiting for January, and some preliminary discussions that we had the last week of January indicated that the revenues seem to be on projection to at least meet the benchmarks. So that, again, that's a positive. So so if we can have 7 months now, 5 or 7 months meeting it, hopefully that will give us more stable numbers that we can look to February, March, and April, and have an indicator on where we can go with the local aid resolution.
If there's any indication of the strength of things coming back, I was talking to some people at the Auburn Mall. The Christmas holiday season, their traffic was up 8% this year. I don't know what their sales were, but their traffic was up 8%. And they had 4 stores, which ones they were, I don't know, but they weren't identified to me, but 4 stores, that are chains that are located in the mall were leaders within the chains for those stores for increases.
Oh, that's right.
So things seem to be turning around in the stores. I understand after Christmas, with people either spending money they received from the gift cards or whatever, that January came in strong. So I think we're going to see some positive numbers coming out of January, which will be good.
Yeah, we've already seen some positive numbers for job opportunities. I was just at Genzyme last night, and they were telling us they're looking at hiring at least 200, maybe 300 people over this year. Liberty Mutual, I think it was, in Boston, just announced that they were going to be hiring 1,300 people this year. And then on the other side, you had Boston Scientific and Shrewsbury is announcing is closing, laying off 300. Walmart, as you said, on 146 right in the Worcester, Millbury Auburn line, they're hiring 600 people. And they've got another store coming in for another anchor store coming in at the other end of this plaza that I believe is going to be another 400 jobs. So just in that one plaza alone, you're looking at close to 1,000 jobs, which will hopefully, obviously, should benefit Central Mass. So we do see some positive indicators coming.
Okay, it's not in our notes today, but I've heard on the news the last few days about what's going on with the turnpike and the possibility of the elimination of the Easy Pass and going to some other method of operation. Have you heard anything about that, or is it just in the talking stages right now?
Just in the talking stages. I know other people have talked about it. I have relatives in New Jersey that when we go there, we drive underneath with the system they have,
Yeah.
and it's a great system. The negative to it, yes, it saves money, creates efficiency, but now you're looking at jobs. I mean, the first day that was in the paper, it's actually funny because you've heard people talk about, we need to have smaller government. We need to make it more efficient, which I am in support of. But then conversely, when this was out in the paper, I had someone coming to me when it was reading the headline saying, here goes the administration now cutting workers, letting workers go. So it's a double-edged sword.
There's been talk about, and I know the type of system you're talking about, like when you drive down through New Jersey and you don't have to slow down or anything. It just reads your plate and you just continue through. But they're talking about possibly assessing cars based on mileage that you drive by putting a
Well, I think that was a different proposal.
but putting a box, well,
A chip. There was
a chip or something in the car so that when you get gas, it'll take a reading on your mileage in the vehicle, and you'll be assessed a dollar amount based on the number of miles that you drive.
Was that part of this proposal or a previous one that they had? I thought that
No,
was...
this one was just out. It was just on this past week.
Okay. I remember that previously being spoken about, where they were talking about that. I think that was when the governor was talking about the gas tax. Wasn't he talking about putting a chip in the car, similar to what you're saying? They would register the miles you put in. I don't know if that would ever
Occur.
I would think a lot of people would have the Big Brother effect, government watching over you. Actually, I don't know if I'd be supportive of that either, putting the chip in the car.
You'd be hitting each and every individual.
Yeah.
And it's an invasion of someone's privacy. If you're just driving on, town streets and you're not traveling on main highways or anything, and they're assessing you a fee, I think there will be a lot of discussion concerning that before that would ever pass.
And also, I know there's the groups that oppose the tolls. That's fine, but if you're not going to be paid for the maintenance and the infrastructure of the Mass Turnpike through tolls, then you have to do it through the gas tax. I personally am opposed to it. I voted against the gas tax and I vote against it again. I think that's more of a regressive tax on people. I think right now the system with the tolls it's a user's fee. If you use the roadway in the system, you're paying for it. If you don't ever go on the turnpike, why should you have to pay for that infrastructure? And people should understand too. You look at the Auburn interchange, or the interchange they just put in the Millbury-Worcester one. You've got to pay for that. The payment for that infrastructure has to come somewhere. And if you look at by the interchange coming there, the Blackstone Valley was opened up. You've got these new 1,000 jobs that possibly could be coming to for the Walmart and the other anchor store. You've got all the jobs that were created at the shops at Blackstone Valley. So as long as the money is being spent efficiently, and if we're overpaying people or the money's being wasted, then we've got to curb that. I mean, that shouldn't be tolerated. But the money to pay for the infrastructure and to support the local economy has got to come from somewhere. So I would much rather see a user fee than people having to bear the cost of the gas tax. And at that point, too, if you have a gas tax that's too high here in Massachusetts, I gas up before I get here. I'm not paying any of those fees. That's going to pay for the maintenance of the road. At least now you have all the vehicles coming in from interstate commerce that they're going through the tolls. They're paying for it. We're getting revenue from them to pay for the maintenance of these roads.
do you have anything else to cover today? I know next time you said we'll have more on, possibly more on the budget, more development as time goes on, even though we won't have definite figures probably until, I believe, May, you had said, but there should be a little, there should be, there should be, there still should be some more information available to us when we meet next.
Yes, by our next meeting, hopefully the House will have released their budget, so we'll have those numbers compared to the governor's numbers. Oh, one thing that we did last year that we're going to do again this year. Last year, myself and Senator Chandler and the representatives from the district, we sponsored a seminar at South High School. We had Mike Woodmeyer from the Mass Taxpayers Foundation come in, which is a nonpartisan group, to come in and talk about the revenue projections and what they thought the monies that the budget should be based on. We are actually we're going to sponsor that again. We just haven't determined the date, and when we get that date finalized, we'll put out a letter to the selectmen, to the school committee, all elected official, and to the public, basically anyone who wants to attend, so they can hear from a nonpartisan individual what we should expect for budget numbers and how the budget should be based. So we're going to try. We are going to try to make this, from our standpoint, an open and transparent process, getting input from everyone. Because the last thing we really need right now is people looking at the budget thinking we're hiding things. So we want everyone to see what we have to do to base this budget, so they know. When we give you your numbers, you know what it's being based on.
Okay. Being nothing else, I'm going to thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you for having me again here.
And look forward to next month with more information for the public.
Thank you. Oh, and actually, one thing before we leave, I just want to congratulate Selectman Doreen Goodrich and the producer of the show, Chris Hugo, for winning the Dancing with the Stars contest. That was for the Auburn Youth and Family Services. For that, thank you for having me here, and I'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.